Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce Mr. Christopher Cross. Christopher, thank you so much for being here.
Rick, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So when I made that video about your Ride Like the Wind solo, how did you hear about that?
Well, I think I just told you that I got more hits or whatever you call people getting in touch with me. The only thing that competed with that was when I was mentioned on Seinfeld. But I just got inundated by all these people sending your because your reach is huge, and everybody sending me this thing. I was, frankly, really shocked because I never ever gave it a bit of thought, And then when I saw you do it, which was amazing, I went, oh, okay. I guess I kind of see that, that maybe. But we were going for a wall of sound. The strings, McDonald.
Yeah.
It was a wall of sound kind of thing. But I will tell you that. My first album, I had Larry.
Yep.
I had Graydon.
Yep.
I had Eric Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pretty intimidated. So, I probably wasn't looking to push up my solo particularly because, you're in that crowd. And actually, I think it was later on, it was Larry and Luke probably that really encouraged me to kind of play more on my own records. But yeah, so maybe it's all that, but I never gave it a thought.
I was talking to my brother, John, my younger brother, who's a guitar player. I talked to him this morning, actually, and told him that you were coming in. But that morning when I made that video, and I talked about seeing this guy do a reaction video to it, and I said, that solo, he's like, yeah, it's way too low. That's such a great solo and everything. So then about an hour later, I call him back and said, I found the tracks to this thing.
Yeah, I wonder where you got those.
I was like, yeah, I found the tracks. It was on a hard drive somewhere. Check it out. And then I played it over the phone for him, just a solo by itself. He's like, that's amazing. You need to make that video. I said, yeah, I'm going to make the video right now. I was so psyched.
I got to say, I was impressed by myself. When you soloed it, and I was like, but it was actually pretty good.
Okay, wait, what were you playing through? I have so many questions. What were you playing through then?
I thought about that because if you do, 59 Les Paul.
Okay.
Directly into an overdrive special, Dumble. No pedals.
You can tell the amp is cranked. You can tell it's really,
that just straight in 59 into the overdrive special.
Okay, so you're a guitar guy. I always knew you were a guitar guy. You had all these, all the best session players on your records and everything. And I know that you're fans of people like Larry Carlton.
Big fan, yeah.
So how did this happen? Talk about the producing of the first record and how you got, Eric Johnson, who's you're longtime friends with, played on your first record. Kind of talk about that whole thing.
Well, in the case of Eric, of course, I knew Eric since I was 19, so I knew how great he was, and I was looking for an opportunity to kind of share it with the world, so I asked him to play on that track. But with the other people, like Larry, Michael Lamartian, that produced my record, was a staff producer, just been signed to staff producer at Warner Bros. And when I went into Warner's for the meeting, I was kind of looking around for Gary Katz or Ted Templeman or one of those guys. I didn't really know who Marty was, and it was kind of a hard sell for Michael Austin, who signed me. And then he said, he could see it wasn't going well, so he said, Martin played on Steely Dan. And I said, what?
He did.
You did? I said, what'd you play on? And he said, everything.
He did.
So then I was like, Larry Carlton? And he goes, yeah. And I said, can you get him to play my record? And he goes, yeah. And I said, he doesn't do sessions anymore. He's a solo artist. He said, well, I know Larry pretty well. I think I can get him to do it. And so that was the deal. I said, okay, if you can get Larry Carlton to play my record, you could produce my record. And years later, when
I heard that story. I didn't know it was true.
Well, and I only shared it with Carlton some years ago, and Larry said, I should have been getting points. Marty wouldn't even produce a record without me. I was sent over to Larry's house. I guess Marty was busy, and I went over to Larry's house, room 335, on Barham there, and somebody delivered the tapes, and I walked into Larry's studio, and he was with his amp and his guitar, and I sat at the board with him, and it was surreal, unbelievable.
Did he play the solo while you were there?
Yes.
Or no?
Yes.
He plays on.
He plays on The Light Is On, and I Really Don't Know Anymore.
Really Don't Know Anymore. Yeah, that's right. I Really Don't Know Anymore. That is a really interesting solo. So great. So Larry.
Very Larry.
Right, and so he played them right when you were there.
Yes, he played when I was there. Yeah.
What was it? What was that like?
It was just like
because you're such a huge fan.
Out of body, just unbelievable. Like you said, his approach. In fact, years later, I would ask Larry, "Can you show me a little something, or whatever?" And I'm a real basic player, so he would start trying to show me stuff, and I said, "I'm just not getting it." He says, "Yeah, I'm always taking a left." Because he's jazz trained and I'm not. But no, that was the big moment. To have Larry, that was my biggest dream about my record, was to have Larry on. And it really came from Real Scam. When I got that record, it was just, incredible. So yeah, so Marty put that together. And then I was lucky with Don Henley, I knew from Texas. We're both Texans, so Don rarely sings on stuff, got Don. And then some of the people, Nicolette Larson, she was on the label, and Ted was producer. So I just had all these people fall into place, and it was
Mike McDonald.
Mike McDonald, Marty and Doobies were recording, taking to the streets next door.
Okay.
And Marty knew McDonald from Steely Dan.
Yeah.
And invited him over to hear what we were doing. And Mike came in and said, wow, man, sounds great if you need any vocals or whatever. And so he sang on...
Wait a second, is that how it happened?
Yeah, literally, because Mike's so great. And
if you need any vocals...
So he sang on I Really Don't Know Anymore.
Yep.
Later that day, and then when we were done Ride Like the Wind, we had the answer part from we
Yeah.
played it, and we thought, boy, McDonald would kill this, so we brought him back in. But and Mike's funny, he's so great. He said he was over there recording, and he said, yeah, he said I walked in and heard what you were doing. He said, you know how it is when you're in your session, then you go next door and you go, well, this sounds really good, a lot better than what we're doing.
Always, right?
Always. But anyway, no. So that was again a connection. But Valerie Carter, I got through Lenny Waronker, so it was pretty amazing. And frankly, I will say that having these people on my record, Warner puts out 50 records a month. I completely believe that when those things went out to radio and they turned the record over and saw Larry Carlton and Michael McDonald and these people, it was said, well, I got to check this out because what are they doing on this nobody's record?
Okay, this is a very interesting point. Session players, like those session players, really carried a lot of weight
They
back then.
absolutely did, especially at
Talk
radio.
about that.
Well, I think radio guys, almost everybody, all my techs that I work with, they're all musicians at one point.
Yes.
I used to be a bass player. The DJs the same way. They're all players, and a lot of them are really into, all the minutia of the business.
Yes.
And the ultimate guy who's an amazing player too is Questlove. Quest's 52 years old and knows everything about music from the dawn of time.
Right.
But these guys, they're musicians and they're fans. So they know these players. Yeah, they definitely take notice of stuff that they play on. So I think when they saw, because my album was pretty loaded up with, but McDonald too. I mean, when Mike comes out of Ride Like the Wind, so I don't discount at all that all those people really helped me to break through radio and have success. So yeah.
All my friends looked at the back of albums and when I saw those people playing on records, I would buy the records because I wanted to hear what they played.
Of course.
If Larry was playing on something, it's like, do you play a solo on it? Because it's not like now where you can just open up Spotify or Apple Music and listen to it and see. But
yeah, the first Larry told me the first thing he played for Steely Dan was a rhythm part.
Okay.
The last thing on the record, and they brought him in for a rhythm part. But no, real scam. I mean, I bought the record, came home, and had my doors open and put it on and sat on the patio, smoked a joint. It was just like, that was it.
That record is, I just listened to that whole record the other day all the way through, and it's...
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Crazy, fantastic. So anyway, that came through Omardian, and I think a lot of it, I think Henley, friend Eric, and with Eric, I was just such a fan. I knew him, since I was 19, that I just, it felt like...
Would you guys play gigs together or something? Like have your own bands?
No, Eric was interesting. His father was a radiologist, and they lived in a nice area, and he had this really cool music room, and he studied like piano and everything. He's very trained, and he didn't play in cover bands and stuff.
Okay,
he had his own bands, and so he wasn't a guy that did that.
Okay.
But I would always go to his house and hang out, and he was studying, Wes and Jerry Reed, is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he studied all that stuff, and he still plays beautiful piano, and so he didn't ever play in cover bands and stuff. He did do that, but I met him at a gig. He had a band called Mariani, who had a lead singer, and Eric was playing guitar. And they opened for Deep Purple in San Antonio on the very first Deep Purple gig in the U.S., and Richie Blackmore got a reaction to a flu shot and couldn't play. It's a long story, but through the promoter, who was a friend of mine, I ended up subbing for Richie on this Deep Purple gig and met Eric at the gig. And
that is so random.
And it's really, Richie Blackmore called me a few years ago and said, they're doing a documentary on me, and I want you to be interviewed, because he said, over all the years that people sat in with the band, like Clapton or whoever, he said, no one ever subbed for me but you. And I knew the hits, and we played some blues, and we got through it. It is amazing. And then I went to the airport a couple days later when I left, and I got Richie's pick, and he talked to me, and it was cool. But yeah, I just, they didn't want to cancel the show because of the first show. And I had a Flying V and a Marshall and everything, so I had long hair, I had hair. And I was kind of, it was amazing. So, but Richie later told me that was the only person that ever subbed for him. But that's when I met Eric.
Okay.
We did Mariani, and we just connected, and so when I got up to Austin, we've just been, best friends ever since, and it's been amazing. He's played on a lot of my records over the years, so an incredible musician and wonderful. I always tell people that don't know him, so the greatest, as you know, greatest cat in the world, just so sweet, gentle, and beautiful person.
Well, the first thing I ever heard of him was on the last track on your record.
Yeah,
your
Mr.
first
Gigolo,
record.
yeah, just crazy. So then I told you that then suddenly he's on Guitar Player magazine that said, who is Eric Johnson? Why is he on the cover? And then subsequently I got Warner's, he got a deal. I talked to Warner's and they gave him a deal. He did Tones, his first record.
Yep.
But Warner's really didn't understand Eric. You know, they wanted him to be Satriani. And so then Eric left and went to Capitol and had a V Musicom and then broke out. But I did, you know, I helped get him a deal there. But it's been a wonderful friendship, and just like Michael McDonald's the same way. Just, you know, we connected and then we've remained super close. So, yeah, Eric's. But no, Larry was the big kahuna in that, the big catch.
Tell me, I want to go back a little bit to your early guitar days and some of the gear that you had. I know you're kind of a gear guy, right?
Definitely a gear geek, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the stuff that you've owned over the years.
Well, you know, in the beginning, I was a drummer originally, and then the first real guitar I got was a Rickenbacker hollow body.
Okay.
And I had a super reverb. And I was more of a rhythm player.
Okay.
And I wanted a Rickenbacker because of the Beatles. And of course, I don't know what you think about them, and not to disparage them, but you know, they're terrible playing guitars. They got all that coating.
Rickenbackers? Yeah.
Well, they got all the coating over the neck, and the
Yeah.
bridges is really tough. It's like setting up a Gretsch.
Yeah.
But I got the thing, and talked my parents into it. So I played that initially. But then after a while, it was like we needed somebody to play the leads and stuff. And there wasn't anybody to do it, so I was stuck trying to learn the leads. You know, it's hard to remember, Rick. It's like, at some point, I switched to like Twins or whatever, but then ultimately, the first serious amp I got was with the Dumbles.
Okay.
Because I knew
some of the first ones that they made?
Well,
when
no,
would this have been?
Alexander
So he
Howard,
was making them in the early 70s,
I learned about him
mid-70s?
through Lowell George. You know,
Okay.
Lowell was playing him, Bonnie was playing him.
Okay.
And so I, you know, learned about him through Lowell George, who I'd never met, but I was a huge fan. So I think Bonnie's the one maybe that put me in touch with Howard Alexander, as he likes to be called. And so I had to make me an amazing rig. I had an overdrive special with a 410 in the orange suede.
Okay.
Then I had these two big rhythm amps that were KT88s, 4 KT88s, with 2x12s, and they had the Christopher Cross Flamingo logo on them.
Okay.
Somebody in Japan owns them now. So, and then I got these Japanese Strats that I put just the middle and bridge pickup on, because all I used was the famous Clapton sound. And then Alexander built me this analog relay setup. It had a big cable, like a speaker cable coming out of the guitar, and it went through this relay setup. And it switched between, up was the stereo with that gray chorus pedal, rhythm, and I flipped it down, and it was the overdrive special for solo. Wow. It was it was like up and down. And and those amps, the KT88s, became the steel string singer that Stevie played. But what was great is when Alexander built me this relay interface thing, I said, "What do I owe you?" And he handed me a page out of the Sears catalog of a washer and dryer. He said, "Have this delivered to my house, and we're even." It was like bartering for bread. You know, it was great. He was a gentle giant, just a fantastic person. So yeah, that was my first kind of real serious rig. And then I forget what made me switch over. I met Bruce Egnater and started wanting to do the MIDI switching thing, because the Dumbles were a little limited as far as channels and that sort of thing. And then, you know, I went through the Pitbulls, Stevie and Fred. And then, you know, of course, Marshalls along the way, had Plexis and all that. Then Wagner, worked with Brian Holden.
You played. How long did you play Wagner for?
Pretty long time. I had the original Ecstasy before he modded it.
Yeah.
It got kind of dirty. Had the original Ecstasies, so I had that. Most of the times it was a stereo rig. And the Wagners, and then I forget, you know, at some point I got with Fred Taccone at Divided by 13, and I divided my signature amp. Now it's a 3C amp, which is EL84s and 6V6s, and I have a stereo wet kind of thing going. But the amp thing, we'll tell you this. So I'm living in San Antonio, and I'm playing local bands. Okay. And we had a band called Flash. And my manager was kind of a promoter, and he was doing shows. And Zeppelin and Jethro Tull came through. Okay. First tour in the U.S. And it was a law in Texas at the time that you had to have a local band on every show for 30 minutes. I got to do these 7 shows with Zeppelin.
Wait, what?
So after the second show, and you know, it was different then. There wasn't all the security. They were, you know, it was all new, you know. So we shared dressing rooms, like big room like this. And Plant and Page came over, like the second night, they said, "How are you guys following us around? Are your parents rich or something?" And I said, "No, you know, our band is opening the show." So that night I looked over the wings and Page and Plant were standing there watching
Oh,
us.
my
And we were
God.
terrible. But, you know, at sound checks, I would always come out and sit on a case and watch Jimmy, you know, do his thing, which was amazing. But so he had high watts, like you've got, you know.
Yeah.
And I talked to him, I said, you know, I've seen these in magazines, you know. I've never actually seen one. He said, well, nobody has them but Pete and I, you know. Dave Reeves makes them in his garage, blah, blah, blah. You know all that. He said, if you want one, give my roadie Clive some money and we'll have Dave build you one. So I give Clive $700, which was a lot for me.
Yeah.
And all my friends said, oh, you're not going to see your money. 2 months later, by boat, in my house is 2 cardboard boxes, 50-watt head,
No
4x12. And I had a high watt. Not only did I have only high watt in town, but I got it from Jimmy Page.
Oh my God. You now tell me you still have that. No.
You know?
You don't have any of this stuff, Christopher,
no
do you?
more. But
How about the 59 Les Paul?
no, all gone. I'm into kind of what's... Yeah, I play
Tom Anderson.
Yeah, I'm into
Yeah.
Tom's guitars now. They're just so
His
beautiful.
guitars are amazing.
Amazing. They're just, and I play
great.
Taylor acoustics just because they're so rock solid,
Yeah.
you know. But so I've had Olsons and all that stuff. But anyways, years later, I was doing a bunch of shows with the Beach Boys, big 4th of July. Jimmy was on the show,
Okay.
playing blues, you know, doing his own solo thing. And I went back and talked to him. But then, of course, my album had been released. I was Christopher Cross. He knew me as that. I went back and talked, made a little visit, and I told him the story. And Jimmy had no recollection of it at all.
Okay.
But you know what he said that was nice? He said, but I like this story. He said, because it sounds like I was nice to you. And I said, man, you were so gracious and nice. I was like a little puppy dog following you around. What kind of strings you use? And you never, you know, you always gave me time of day and we were kind. And he said, I like to hear that. It's nice to hear. I was kind. You know,
What
nice to you.
was a Zeppelin sound check like?
Well, you know, Jimmy would come out and get his sound, and, you know, it was amazing because, you know, and they had the theorem and all that stuff. And then they generally all come out. Bonham, sometimes I played drums first, so Bonham would usually come out first, check the drums, which was unbelievable because I was a drummer. And watching him kind of do his thing. And then Jimmy'd come, they'd all kind of check individually, and then they'd come out and play, you know, a few tunes, and it was just, you know, crazy, fantastic. I mean, just, I got to do a lot of that stuff. I got to open for Airplane, a bunch of other people. I mean, Blind Faith, I remember Clapton coming out, red 335, coil cord, no pedals, 2 stacks jumped. Walked out into the arena by himself, and I'm over here on a case. And Eric just played for like 30 minutes by himself.
Oh my God.
There's a lick I heard that he walked out, the first lick he played, and I remember it. But that was unbelievably cool.
Don't you wish you had cameras back then, video
Yeah,
cameras?
cell phones. But no, the Zeppelin thing was cool in the high watts. But yeah, I don't have all that stuff, and people ask me all the time. But there's a couple things. Wish I had the high watt. I wish I had the Dumbles.
Those things are probably floating around somewhere, right?
Yeah, I was in a bathroom at DFW, and I was standing there, and this Japanese guy next to me says, "You Chris Cross?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I buy you a Dumble amp. You got foot switch?" I said, "What?"
No way.
He said, "Yeah, I buy you a Dumble amp. I got no foot switch. You got foot switch?" I said, "I don't have a foot switch, man." You know? And he wants me to get a hold of the Dumble to get a foot switch.
Okay.
And I said, "Man, Dumble's very exotic. Like, you don't just, you know, blah, blah, blah." And then I said, plus, you know, those foot switches, they're a regular Fender foot switch. You can just go buy one, and they'll fit the thing. And he's like, "No, I want, you know, Dumble." But I kept on trying to tell him, there's nothing special about the Dumble foot switch. But yeah, how's that for 6 degrees of separation? But yeah, he's in Japan. He bought them, and he has them. But I'm sure all that stuff's out there somewhere. And everybody always thought my 59 was Duane Allman's. But I owned mine, or Pearly, and I owned mine the same time that Billy and Duane owned theirs, so that wasn't true. You get a lot of folklore.
Okay, so how much was the 59 Les Paul when you bought it then?
I bought it for $350 in a hawk shop.
Okay, and what year would that have been?
You know, early 70s probably.
Okay.
Somebody told me about it, and I went there, and, you know, I saw it. I was pretty sure I knew what it was, but I confirmed it later. But mine was kind of weird. It used to have a Bigsby on it, and the fret markers had been replaced and turned around, so the 2 dots were at the 7th fret. It was kind of weird.
Okay.
So when I ended up selling it through Guitar Center, it wasn't worth the kind of money the real clean ones are, but it sounded great, you know. So yeah, but it's okay. I mean, I'm 72 now. I'm playing. I like instruments that are real dependable and playing tune. And
Tom Anderson guitars play incredibly well in tune.
they're like the Mercedes Strat. You know, I play classics, and they're just incredible. And Tom's a real artisan. So yeah, I love his guitars and been with him forever. So I've been lucky there. But yeah, I play Tom's guitars and play Taylor acoustics, and I'm perfectly happy. All the other stuff I had, you know, it all has its own problems. And now I have the divided bys, and a wet dry thing. My dry is on the EL84s and the wets are on 66s. Then I have a pedal board with not too much stuff on it just because I'm singing and playing.
Yeah. So what do you have on it though?
Not much. I have a David Barber pedal for, who's a small pedal builder.
Yeah, I know that is. Yeah.
For my rock kind of rhythm.
Okay.
And I have this overdrive called the Leather Sofa Drive. It's made by this kid named Travis Haskell Young.
Okay.
He doesn't sell them. He made one for Landau, and he made one for a few people. But the best overdrive pedal I've ever heard. Makes a Strat like almost be a Gibson. And then I use an El Cap delay and a chroma course and stuff. So not a lot of stuff because I just can't afford to be screwing around too much. Yeah, but pretty basic. Yeah, it's a studio board. I've got Leslie's and stuff, but yeah, pretty basic because I'm more of a singer-songwriter. I would say that's my main thing, and the guitar's always just been something that's sort of I do it because I don't have anybody else to do it.
On the beginning of Sailing, that's you playing that, right?
Yeah.
You're playing that with a Strat?
I guess so.
You don't remember, right?
It's like people asking Ringo if he used a tea towel.
Right.
It's 40 years ago. People ask me, "Did you use a click?" I don't really remember.
Yeah.
I think
it's
it was
very well played.
I think it was a Strat, probably one of those. It could have been one of those Japanese Strats that I had.
Okay.
But Strat through that gray chorus pedal that Boss made that's real flat. Lazy,
Okay. Well, that was my next question. I figure it sounds like it's a chorus.
Yeah, that gray one that's metal.
Yeah.
It's just through that and through the Strat, and probably doubled it on acoustic, I suppose, but. I don't know.
Okay, so that's in an open tuning. We talked about this a little bit ago.
Yeah, open tuning, and I got
you got a lot of open tunings from Joni Mitchell.
Joni, yeah, Joni's the queen of that, and so I use several of them, but that one in particular, yeah, and I started listening to Joni early on with the tuning thing because it gives you a different palette, to work from, and I think because I'm I talked, I'm a massive Joni fan. Just like I've been doing a lot of stuff these last few records with baritone, and baritones, as you go through and you have peaks and valleys with your writing, sometimes you have to kind of rediscover yourself, and the baritone's a great thing for that because it's a different voice.
Yeah, it sounds totally different, right? And it opens up your brain.
And you play the song that you regularly play on. It's like, what's this? And a lot of guitar players go, well, how do you play it? And I go, it's a guitar, and it's in B. Matheny does some amazing stuff with his baritone. So I've been doing a lot of stuff with baritone, but the tunings are like that with Joni. I've used several of hers because Crosby did a lot of that too.
Yes.
You got to be careful though because Joan has like 50 of them or something like that. You got to be a little careful because there's a modality that comes with the modal tunings that it can become very linear.
Yeah.
And you got to get out of it. You know what I mean? A guy like David Wilcox or somebody that used a lot of some of this stuff, like the Michael Hedges thing, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Mike Dawes says hello.
Mike Dawes, yes.
But you can get trapped where it starts to just almost like a mantra, where it's just this tonal mantra thing.
Like when I did my breakdown of Amelia, I think it was an open C tuning, but she changes keys in it because that's just where her ear leads her, and she has her own way of playing and stuff. She doesn't rely as much on the open strings. She does use them for the dissonances and for the droning, but she'll play bars and things like that. So she'll be changing keys.
Yeah, I think at Joan's house she had. It's been a while, but I was at her house and she had leads or somebody come over, get the guitars up, and they were all sitting around like this in stands, and you could just walk by and just, everyone was tuned different. It's fantastic. But yeah, so I got into that from Joni, and I think, like with Sailing as an example, it's one of these kind of mystical things where I was sitting at home. My first wife was at beauty school or something, and my kid was asleep in the crib, and I was just messing around at the kitchen table, and believe it or not, I played basically the structure of the song, and the lyric and everything came out, like the whole first verse by sort of unrequested. So anyway, then I sat down with a pen. I said, "Wow, this is pretty cool," and I started doing the rest.
Was the guitar just in that tuning?
Yeah. I was messing with her tunings already, and so I had the verse and choruses to the song for like a year, maybe 2, before I came up with the bridge.
Wow.
And the reason was, I was stuck. I had to lift it out of that.
Yeah.
Modality, right?
Yeah,
so it's like, so I'm sitting at the table. It's not far down to paradise, at least it's not for me. And if the wind is right, you can sail away and find tranquility. Oh, the canvas can do miracles. Just you wait and see. Believe me. Sailing takes me away to where I've always heard it could be. Just a dream in the wind to carry me. Soon I will be free. So that kind of came out in one giant vomit. You know, it was like mystical vomit, and I was just like, "That's good. I got to get a pen out. I got a palette pad to start doing that." But so I had that.
Okay.
And then I sat down and wrote the Peter Pan verse, and I did all, and I had the verse and choruses for a long time. But I was just trying to like, finally trying some way of lifting it out of that, because I'm a real Bach freak, you know. So very much like that Jesus Man of Desiring kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And then finally, I stumbled on the right.
Which I love.
Yeah, so I stumbled onto that and lifted it out of that, like Joan does.
Yes.
You know, like you said with the key changes.
With the bars.
Yeah,
too.
exactly like Joan does. And lifted it out of there, and then I had the song completed But anyway, with modals, that's the only problem. Is you just have to be careful, and she's the queen of that. But you got to be careful; you can get stuck like in the mud.
Who wrote the arrangement for that? The string arrangement. The
Michael
beginning?
Omartian.
It's a
Beautiful string arrangement.
My gosh.
And when we brought in our demos, in fact, I have a box set out now. It's my collective works I worked a couple of years on, and they're like, I'm real proud of it. But and in the box set, there's extras and there's the demos we sent to Warner's, the original demos. And the demos are very true to what we did with Omartian, but Michael, of course, played piano. It's amazing. And then he did the string arrangements, which were beautiful.
I want to just play the beginning of that. Were you there at this tracking session?
Sure, yeah.
What was that like?
Asa Droy was the concertmaster. It was amazing.
But that's a perfect introduction.
And whenever you're in the room, I do a lot of symphonies. I use a lot of real strings on my records, and whenever you're in the room, as you know, it's very emotional. I mean, the sound of those players. So, it was fantastic. And as a matter of fact, when we did Ride Like when we did Ride Like the Wind, the string date, I was supposed to see Lowell George at the Roxy that night, and he passed away during the day. So I dedicated Ride Like the Wind to Lowell. And Elizabeth, his wife, came down to my show, and we talked. It was nice. But anyway, back to sailing. Interesting tidbit here that kind of no one knows. So we did the string session. It was beautiful. And then when we were mixing, it was 224s linked.
Yep.
And my first wife's brother was in the studio with us, sitting there listening. And the song originally just started with the guitar.
Okay.
And
how did they sync it up?
Well, the machines are chasing the slave. So it just so happened that the slave chased and that string part played by itself. And then the tapes caught up and the track synced. And my ex-brother-in-law said, "That's cool." And Omartian probably won't be telling people this, but Omartian said, "What?" And he goes, "The way it starts with the orchestra, that's cool." That's how that happened. It was a complete mistake. We would have never thought of it.
That is amazing.
Yeah, and of course it's beautiful. But and we won a Grammy for Best Arrangement. I kind of go, well, actually, but it's just a fluke thing. And fortunately, Omartian was like, yeah, okay, and we did it that way. But that wasn't how it was designed to be done. Yeah.
Wow.
It's kind of like it's like when I got my deal with Warner Brothers, I didn't know much about the record business, and I looked in Billboard magazine and I did some demos, and I saw Mo Austin. He was the chairman of the board. I knew I couldn't get to him. I didn't know about A&R and all that stuff. I just do. But I can get to this next guy, David Burson. I'll send a tape to him. Turns out Burson had nothing to do with A&R. He was like an administrative guy, and he'd never gotten a tape. And he got my tape, and he took Lenny Warnaker, head of A&R, to lunch that day and said, "Check this out." And Lenny said, "Come on, man, that's all I do all day. Just give me." And he put in the tape, and there was a light is on my song, and he went, I like this guy's voice. Give me the tape. And Lenny told me later that had I not sent it to the wrong guy, it would have gone into an envelope.
Yeah.
Been rejected, because Lenny said at that time we had too much submission. Only unless you knew somebody, we wouldn't have ever heard it.
Okay.
And Lenny said, I liked your voice, so.
Talk about how difficult it was to get a record deal back then. Almost impossible. Winning the lottery. And then to have a single that they would spend money on to promote.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you know, Warner's releases 50 albums a month. Though, I mean, that was my dream to get a record deal. That's why when I sent the tape, and then Lenny called me and said, you know, I really like your voice. It's radio friendly. You know, it's pretty unique. He said the songs I'm not so sure about, and I'd sent them pretty much everything.
Right.
And they said, so we're thinking we might get other songs for you to record, but we'd like you to make a record. And I was like, well, I was kind of disappointed because I thought, you know, I want to do my songs, but I said I'll take a record deal if I can get it. And then Marty kind of fought to go in the studio, and then the rest is kind of history. But yeah, believe me, it's like the holy grail if you can get a record deal. And I actually, in spite of what people say, I agree CDs were too expensive and the record companies made a lot of money, but I love the cycle of life back then. You know, you went into the studio, they put up the money, you made a record, you went on the road, you did radio, you promoted it, went back in and made another record, and everything was taken care of.
Yeah.
You know, and I like that.
Because you could be more creative and just focus on that.
Yeah, and there was you were caught in that, you were in the bubble of like this cycle of what you did. You know, you went up, toured, supported the record and all that. It's very different now. You know, it's a singles market, and you can, sure, everybody can put out their music on YouTube, but you're in a sea of heads that are trying to get noticed. So I'm glad I was where I was at the time, even though, you know, the record company made the lion's share of the money. I don't begrudge them. I think they take a big chance.
I mean,
on a
could
lot
you
of
have had a bigger first record like that? I mean, it's unbelievable.
No, and in fact, I saw Mo Austin, rest his soul, at a ASCAP thing for Randy Newman, and I thanked him for all he did for me. He said, we did everything. You made a great record, you know. And I think the only thing that they did do, Eddie Rosenblatt, one of the heads of the company, held the record from a Christmas release till after the first year. I think that was a strategy.
I thought December 20th, I thought the record came out actually originally on 1979. Did it come out after the first of the year?
I think they held it to the first because they were worried about the Christmas thing. But, you know, it just connected at radio. I mean, yeah, it just resonated with people. I think, you know, punk and disco and all that stuff people were kind of maybe tired of it, or they were, people who liked melodic music were looking for something, and I was in the right place at the right time. But it was Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, I think it was, that told me they were driving down the road and Ride Like the Wind came on, and they said they just pulled over and turned to the radio, and Jimmy said, what the fuck is that?
So do you remember getting your first ad, or when they told you that you were getting your first ads to radio?
Well, you know, I didn't know how that stuff worked, but I remember hearing on the radio.
Did people start saying, oh, I'm hearing your song on the radio, any of your friends or anything?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty immediate. So, you know, hearing on the radio was pretty cool, but no, it kind of blew up, you know, out of the box.
Fast.
And so it was, you know, overwhelming, to tell you the truth. I was going through a divorce. It was really difficult at the time personally. And then Henley, Don told me that, you know, you need to be out there playing. So he took me out on the road to the Eagles, and I opened for them for a long time. And that was a huge boost to the record too, because I was out in front of all these people, these huge audiences. So, and then when the second single, I wanted to release I Really Don't Know Anymore.
Yeah.
It was up-tempo.
Mm-hmm.
Mo said, no way, we're releasing Sailing. And I said, you're crazy. It's so dark and introspective. It'll never work. And Mo said, and I remember being on the phone with him and saying, you're out of your mind. And there was silence. I said, sir. And he said, well, I've been doing this for a long time, and I believe in the song. And of course, he was right. And especially on the Florida area and all that. But anyway, yeah, and then we had Never Be the Same, and we had Save Me Mine, all the other tracks. So it just, well, that's another one I was talking about the first record. Jay Graydon was on the first record.
Right.
Right. So I was pretty intimidated. But anyway, yeah, it just hit, and then it was a landslide because we had 4 top 10 singles, and well, really took off. So it was crazy. And then at the Grammys, people had kind of convinced me, I think you'll win Best New Artist. So when I got that award, I sat back down and I was like, I'm cool. This is fantastic. And then everything else happened. That it was pretty insane.
Okay, so I want to play, because I like to play these songs for people. I want to play Ride Like the Wind. Ride Like the Wind is one of the greatest tracks. Everything about it, the arrangement, the performance, the songwriting, singing, everything is incredible about this. And it just starts off so well. To me, this would be, I always think, I'm a huge fan of your solo, and I always thought, man, I could hear Lukather playing on this. I could hear so many people, because it's rare to have an up-tempo song, to have a guitar solo at the end like that, and it's such a great chord progression to play over. But let me play the top.
Lenny Castro.
So good.
Marty didn't put the 4 on the floor.
Okay.
It wasn't 4 on the floor. Michael always says, Mike McDonald says that's the most applause he gets for the least amount of work. Whenever he comes and sits in.
Okay, how much of the
Marty
arrangement?
put the 4 on the floor.
Okay, so how much of the arrangement was done? Was
if
was
you
that?
listen to the box, yeah, it was. I always say in the box set notes, I said the meat of it was there.
Yeah.
The arrangement is just like that. Michael, of course, plays amazing, but the string arrangements are the big thing. And
Yes.
but I mean, the arrangement was the same. We were doing it live like that with such a long way to go and all that. So it was pretty much that way.
But the pocket of it is so good. Everything about it is just.
Well, Marty put the 4 on the floor, which really helped, and then we had Lenny Castor, of course, play it.
Yes.
It was a glue in that with the bongos, the congas we didn't have. So, and then the strings. I mean, that's another thing. Not a lot of people were doing things with strings like that. And I've been a big string guy, so Marty's a great arranger. So, I continue to. I mean, even my last record, all real strings. So, but yeah, it was a.
Okay, so wait, so the track is done. Michael McDonald's in the studio that you guys are in, the same recording in a different room, and then you said, let's just get him to come and sing on this.
Well, it was later. He came in. We were doing it really don't know anymore. So he came in and sang on that, and then
that has a more exposed vocal part on it.
Right, we were
part.
working on this song. We had the part, and we thought, boy, McDonald would sound great doing this. So we called him, and he came down again and did that too. So yeah, but he did on really don't know anymore as well. So, and he's like Eric. He's sung on tons of my records over the years. So yeah, that was. Well, and Crosby always said, Mike has the voice everybody wants, But it's interesting, I saw your thing where it was a Stairway to Heaven, you got different people playing the solo.
Yeah.
And a girl...
Eric played on it. Eric Johnson.
Yeah,
played on it.
Somebody called me and said, you should do that. I said, well, I think the company's fine the way it is. But yeah, Ride Like the Wind, it'd be interesting, hearing if Luke or somebody else played on that.
I'm going to do it.
What's interesting, though, is I think I told you that I did it with Frank Zappa in New York, and Frank asked me to come sit in with him. And I couldn't because I was busy, things were crazy then. I had to go leave town. And then 2 weeks later, I get a cassette in the mail that says Zappa Wind, and Frank played Ride Like the Wind at his show with Al Di Meola. And it's one of the things I treasure. But Frank and Al pretty much solo over the whole thing. I think Frank has this wah-wah and Al's playing. But it was still cool. But yeah, I mean, it's really fun over C minor. It's a great thing to solo over. I'm sure that Luke and those guys would tear it up. And I think that was a big thrill too. When I did the second record, Toto was the rhythm section, Arthur, a lot of that stuff, and it was a thrill to have Luke come and play. I mean, clearly, he's unbelievable. Jeff and the guys, but a solo went all right that Luke did. I learned it. In good nights, I can pull it off. There's one real fast part, and they came to Japan. Toto came to my show in Japan. It was like, great, he's out there now. It's kind of like Carlton with the Kid Charlemagne thing. Right. The Erics, it's funny, the Carlton stuff, forget about it. The light is on, I just do what I do, and then the Eric solos, forget about it.
Yeah.
No way I can play that fast.
You just do your own thing.
I have to, because it's like...
He has some fast... His solo on has some kind of Eric licks where he does the
pentatonic stuff. Yeah, well, it's great the way
fast.
you played Ride Like the Wind, and I saw you do Kid Charlemagne. It's amazing the way you can do that. But yeah, the Eric stuff, I can play it slowed down possibly, but yeah, he's just ridiculous, his technique. So, but anyway, that was a thrill having him come play on stuff. So... and those guys were just so much fun too, especially that day, But yeah, so I think Ride Like the Wind, it's just again.
Wait a minute, hold on.
We're in the right place, the right time for that record.
Okay, playing with those guys, with these great players, it's got to be so fun to see them record their parts, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the second record I used Gadd and Abel Burrell Sr., which was unbelievable.
Come on.
Yeah, and usually I'm playing on the rhythm dates, so it's a thrill. Like I was telling you that I'm touring right now, and I have a great bench of guys. Right now, Keith Carlock's out with me, with Steely Dan. Travis Carlton he had to leave, but he was on the early part of the tour. So I'm very fortunate to have these amazing, Mitch Foreman plays with me sometimes, amazing players. And it's a thrill every night to get up there and hear what they do, because they're virtuosos. And that's part of what I love about. And much like Joan, I tried to grow with my career. The music got more sophisticated, especially lyrically, and it got more sophisticated, and I brought in better players, and I tried to, like Steely, and tried to, emulate Asia and all that. And it's funny, because when Mahjoor came out, and she turned that corner, she lost a lot of people,
Yeah.
From the folk thing.
Yeah.
But for me, I love
that's
Blue.
one of my favorite records of hers.
Yeah, me too, and I love Blue and all that, but I mean, to me, when she got Wagner and started doing that, I think I remember one time saying something to her about how I've basically modeled my career completely after her, and she said, "Yeah, well, in some areas that might be a mistake." But I did that where I've tried to grow and you know and every time get more sophisticated. And a lot of it's based on sort of the Asia thing, where you just get great players and let them bring that jazz influence to the music. It's not like it's jazz, but it's harmonic enough for them to, you know.
Yeah, they have to have something to work with there, and you had those the structures with your songs that would warrant having those players to do, you know, to give them something to really work with.
Yeah, and everything's. I haven't rehearsed in 25 years. Everything's charted, and I have a book of 100 charts, and they're really roadmaps. I want them to interpret the chords and stuff the way they want. And every guy brings a different thing to it, but it's great too, not having to rehearse. It's like this guy who's out right now, Mark Stevens, who I hadn't met, but he plays with Larry. Travis recommended him. He's crazy great, you know. And I can pretty much, if I get a referral from somebody, like a Will Lee or somebody, they show up and they're great. So, been very lucky to play with some incredible people.
Let's talk about your favorite Steely Dan tracks, because you're wearing a Steely Dan Asia T-shirt here. If I had to say, give me your top 5 Steely Dan songs, what are they?
I'd probably say Any Major Dude would be high up there. Home at Last. And a lot of these are based, I mean, musically, but lyrically.
Yeah.
Home at Last. Third World Man, because of Larry's solo.
Larry solo, yeah. I think that was actually wasn't that a leftover track from the previous record?
That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing some rumors about that. But and I heard, this is true, but I think I was telling you to mention that there was, at some point, Katz made some overture about me playing on something, and I think, could be wrong, but I think the track they were possibly considering me for is Third World Man. And I'm like, so glad, thank God there is a God, and he didn't have me play on that record. Because, you know, I saw Donald play a solo show at the World Tour with John and Wayne Krantz.
Okay.
And they doubled it. And it was unbelievable. And I mentioned it to Larry. I said, they doubled it like you did on the record. Larry said, I didn't double it. They put some shit on it, but I didn't double it. But I said, Third World Man. And then, you know, you go later on, I would say, this isn't Steely Dan, but like there's a tune called Cousin Dupree that I absolutely love. But, you know, I mean, it's, Don't Take Me Alive, I mean, there's tons. It's hard, that catalog is impeccable, you know, it's just...
Did you listen to them from the first record? Were you into them right at the beginning?
I heard Do It Again on the radio, and that was pretty much it. You know, I just was drug into it. In fact, I told Keith one of my bucket list things is to come out and sing Dirty Work with Donald, because, you know, Jim Hodder sang it on the record.
Yes.
It's one of the things that Donald doesn't sing. Usually the girls sing it, so I'm kind of putting my
I'd love that
wish
tune.
list to come back. Yeah, great song. So all those early Fire in the Hole and all that stuff, I mean, there's from the beginning, there's such great stuff. We used to encore with Pretzel Logic. But yeah, it's fascinating the way they think and just the whole thing. You know, one thing, it's going back to what I meant to bring up to you, it's interesting, you were talking, when you did the Ride Like the Wind thing, you know, on my solo, and you were talking, it was interesting to hear you take on my influences. I was fascinated because I forget who you said, but you brought up some people, and like I think you mentioned the guy in AC/DC or whoever, and which I've never listened to him. I don't.
Okay.
Well, I'm too old for that. Like I wasn't a rock guy, but you know who was some of the ones you thought of? Which I mean, Clapton, Beck, the typical ones. But you know who was a big influence on me? Actually, Eric was, of course, because I grew up kind of with him.
Yeah.
As much as I could assimilate. But you know who was also a really big influence? Billy Gibbons. Because I grew up in Texas with Billy from the early days, and man, most of the structures of my solos and stuff, it's all Billy. You know, now, it's funny, Billy Bob Thornton calls them a cartoon. They're like a cartoon, man. And they're still fantastic, but those early records, and still, Billy plays amazing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So I really...
Now, did you ever, so there's a Texas thing, you got the Stevie Ray with his 13s and you got Billy with his 8s or whatever. What did you play? What
I'm a
gauge of
10s
strings?
guy. I'm a 10s guy.
Okay.
I played, can't do the 8 thing, which I hear you do.
I do 8s now, yeah.
Mike Dawes told me that.
Yeah.
But I played Stevie Strat and it was unplayable. I mean,
really?
you got to be arms of steel to play that thing. Crazy. But you get so much sound out of the string. But I play 10s.
Did you say to him, how do you even play this?
Well, it's the same thing I told Jeff Beck. I was at a Jeff show and his guitar was in the rack, and I picked it up and kind of plucked around on it because his action's pretty high, you know, because he's got the bar.
Yeah.
And I said to Jeff, rest his soul, what a loss. I said, how do you play this thing? He goes, I get by, or I manage, or something like that. I manage. But Yeah, it would be hard to play, the way he does. But on Stevie's guitar, it was just, with the 13s, it's a lot to pull. But that's how he gets that sound. There's so much sound coming out of the strings. But Billy's always used, there's a lot of distortion. But yeah, he was an early influence. And I think my basic structures because I'm more of a blues, seventh kind of guy, so they really come from that, really more than anything else. And I remember I got this gig one time. Before my record came out, I was trying to get a gig as a sideman, and the guys in the band were kind of big Chick Corea, Return to Forever guys. Mm-hmm. And they got to play one song before the lead singer, he was an Elvis impersonator guy or something, came out. And we played this Space Circus, this thing, da 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 da. Anyway, they wanted, and so they said, okay, take a solo. Man, that was not in my wheelhouse. It's like everything I played didn't work. And they were looking at me very suspect. I said, let me chat on this a little bit. I'll come tomorrow and have it. Ran over to Eric's house. And I said, I got to have this gig. I got to pay the rent. They want to play with this Chick Corea tune. Can you help me? And Eric said, yeah, let me show you this scale called pentatonic. He said, just get this scale down and then just use that to kind of work around. And I went back and I played some shit. And they were kind of like, I don't know, man, but okay. And I got the gig.
Nice.
But, that wasn't where I came from. It was like when I asked Larry, to show me some stuff, and I just couldn't, because I'm not a formally trained guy, so.
It's interesting that you said that because Larry did stop doing sessions by that time period.
Solo artist, yeah.
So this was really a favor to Michael and Marty and then.
Yeah, Marty called him up, and the whole thing I told you, I would go over there, and it was out of body, man. I mean, to walk in and, room 335, Larry's sitting there, and, I guess he has boogie or whatever he had, just, like you said, the way he thinks, it's so out of the box and so unusual.
Yeah.
That I was just
nobody like Larry.
Thrilled. And you're right, I really don't know more solo. It's just, I mean, I got to say, not that it's like that, but, really don't know a little bit of that real scam kind of thing.
Yes,
there.
absolutely.
That's what he does.
It's interesting you say that, because I listened to that again today, and I thought of all the records that he played on, that's the most like a Royal Scam solo, because he did "Don't Take Me Alive" and "Kid Charlemagne," and the note choices and stuff.
Yeah, so that was no, he wasn't doing sessions, and I was really lucky that but of course that was the deal. You could produce my record.
Actually, I want to play that solo so that people know what we're talking about. Let me find it here.
That's some fine work. Did you ever notice that I've always noticed these two solos that Larry played on my record, it was kind of, I feel like he had the tone knob turned down a little more.
Yeah.
It's a little darker than the Scam stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's got a little more of a over it.
He recorded them on his own, so maybe it's that.
It was treble pickup, but it was more almost like it was on the bass pickup or something. Cause it's got a more of a covered kind of sound to it. And of course, you're right. He was at home. Maybe it was more like that how he records.
Yeah.
But I was but the crazy, ridiculous, solo. It's just like, that's why I say, the arrangement I do right now, I really don't know where, there's no guitar solo, but it wouldn't matter, because when I did play it, it was some bullshit, because, no, this has been a real, as for whatever degree, I'm a guitar player, because like I'm more of a singer-songwriter. My heroes, I've been very lucky to, know and interact and work with some of these guitar players. Like I mentioned Jimmy and then Jeff Beck. It's kind of, it's a trip. Still, I have to pinch myself. It's like, that Jody, these people who I've, McCartney that I've gotten to know, that they were just albums on the wall, So, been a wonderful ride,
Christopher, it's just such an honor to have you here.
Real pleasure, Rick. I'm a big fan.
I was so looking forward to this, and I'm glad that we finally could hear your solo at the proper level.
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan, and I appreciate you, kind of humbled, but appreciate you sticking it out there for everybody to hear. And like I said, I'm super proud of it now, but at the time I wouldn't have thought of doing it. But yeah, it was cool. And like I said, everybody wrote me about that thing, you know. So thank you for that. Yeah, and thank you for this. It's been fun.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah, man.